Okay, we're now in episode 4 of the Synoptics. No, I'm sorry, episode 5. And here we're going to start interweaving Luke again, but in light of what's gone before about Matthew's agenda and Matthew's plotline. Highlighted on the left is the first political scandal as a result of the royal bloodline descending to Christ through Mary. I'm not going to cover the genealogy comparison between Luke and Matthew yet. We're focusing on the theme of Matthew, which is the political brouhaha that constitutes the birth of Messiah, both personally inside Israel itself due to all the factions, and internationally given the kind of promise that the birth of Messiah is. Again, the birth of Messiah indicates, the prophecy of it is that he's going to take over the world, defeat everybody who's an enemy of Israel, and rule the world. Okay, whenever you have a claim of world rulership, any time in history, you have a world war type, situation. And of course, the size of that world depends upon, who's the audience in view. But for whoever that audience is, and it is supposed to be the entire world, that's the prophecy, then the entire world cannot be neutral to this. They're either going to laugh at it, because Israel is such a tiny nation. They're either going to laugh at it, or they're going to persecute the Jews. All right, and the problem that the world has had with the Jews is that despite their smallness, nobody's been able, to really defeat them. They defeat themselves, and then the enemy gets to come in. That's been the history. Okay, the Jews disintegrate from within, and then the enemy can come in and get them. That's the story of the Old Testament. That was the prophecy in Leviticus 26. You don't obey me, then your enemy will be able to get at you. As long as you're obeying me, your enemy can't get at you. All right, and there are levels of obedience, and beneath all of them is the protection that is promised to Abraham. Therefore, Israel indirectly inherits that protection, even when she is disobedient. The protection to Abraham's kids is sustaining her. In Genesis 12, 15, and 17, anyone who curses, the children of Israel will be cursed. That too has been the trend of history. And I mean, you can look at any book that you want. Most recent vintage, of course, has been the Arab world, and that's going on right now. The Arab world is falling apart. And it has periodically done so, approximately every 430 years, because it rises to try to defeat Israel every 430 years. And that's why the West is hated, because actually we are a product of, Mosaic law. Our own laws in the West mimic the Ten Commandments. All right, we've incorporated them into secular law like Israel had done. And so therefore we are guilty by association with that law. And therefore the Arabs, now calling themselves Muslims for the most part, hold us responsible. All right, and they're in their jihad really against Israel. The whole book of the Quran is a terrorism religion against Israel. It's entirely founded on anti-Semitism. And you can find that out in many places on the internet or by any scholarly reference you choose to name. Okay. So I'm going to dispense with that part of the political problem. And I'm going to get to what the Bible focuses on, even though the Bible does deal with the Arab issue. I'm going to just deal with the way Matthew is constructing it. Now think of this as a movie. All right, maybe I should go back. All right. You have to understand the culture of the day. All this was memorized. All these facts were memorized and talked about by people. Just like people gossip today about movie stars and all that. They talk about, famous people in their own history. That kind of thing has always been done, especially in a society that's of low technology, because that means there's a lot of labor that's mindless because you don't have machines to do it. And so people are busy talking while they're working. They don't have to concentrate 100% on what they're doing, because what they're doing, they've done 1,000 times before, and they can half do it in their sleep. So that leaves their brains free to think. And they're thinking about their stories, and they're talking to each other as a form of entertainment to pass the time while they do the work that they've got to do with their hands. All right? So all this would have been memorized anyhow. Okay, this was the kind of record that you had to keep in the temple. The temple kept these kinds of records, and that's why Mary, as we're going to see in Luke, registers in the temple the birth of Christ. She has to. She's royal family. Okay? And everybody kept their own genealogies, even if they didn't register them in the temple. But if you were a royal family, you had to register it with the temple. All right? And that's why this kind of thing can be recited by Matthew. Matthew's reciting something that everybody already knows. And that's why when he truncates it to 14 generations, everybody knows he's not including everybody, all the generations. So there's no excuse for the scholars to say that the Bible is, defective because it doesn't list all the generations. They're displaying their own ignorance of Jewish culture when they say that. Okay? If you have anybody who disputes this genealogy, just laugh at them, because they've already proven themselves an idiot by disputing it. Okay? You can say, well, you don't necessarily know all the names. Okay, that would be an honest statement. A person who hasn't studied it enough won't know all the names, and unfortunately, a lot of the information we need is in the hands of the Jews that we're not asking them. But the Jews don't have a problem with this. Even the Talmud, which is the parts that are usually excised now, but in the original versions of the Talmud, there's a whole lot of stuff that's said in guarded language against Christ. Okay, calling him a bastard, essentially. And you can understand why. Okay? But they don't dispute that he's a son of David. They dispute whether he's legitimate. And in that sense, maybe there's some some parts in the original Talmud and gossip and stories that dispute that he actually was a son of David. But the primary argument that the Jews make against Christ isn't that he's a son of David and isn't that he's a Jew. It's that he claimed to be the Son of God, meaning equal to God. All right? So this genealogy is really important because the promised Son of God is supposed to be a son of David. And this was a well-known genealogy, and it was recited with the names as currently, the current nicknames at the time that Matthew's writing. So, the other current cultural thing that you've got to keep in mind is Greek culture. At this time, and it's been true at this point for like 300 years, at the time Matthew's writing, Greek culture permeates the region. It started to do so as a result of Alexander. That's one reason why the LXX was written. The Greek culture had so permeated the region that the Jews of Alexandria, for example, didn't know Hebrew anymore. So the scholars came up with a translation, which is called the LXX, and some ding-dongs decided to try to, because they felt guilty that it was a translation, they tried to pretend that it was inspired. It's the same argument as the King James only people make today. Okay, so there was some guy named Aristeas, and whether that was his real name is beside the point, who tried to claim that, 70 people, all sitting in separate rooms, came up with the identical translation of the inspired Hebrew. Okay, it really was a translation, it really was done by Jews, but obviously it wasn't done in 70 days by 72 people. Okay, that was the flourish, the invention. Okay, but everybody was using that translation. Christ learned it too. This is in that Greek. It uses the keywords of that translation. All the Gospels, all the New Testament uses LXX keywords frequently. I mean, practically every other verse. So, Greek culture, as well as Jewish culture, has to be taken, excuse me, has to be taken into account when looking at the Gospels. And in hermeneutics, they call this isagogics, taking into account the writing at the time, what was the culture at the time of writing, so you can understand what the words meant to the people who got it. Otherwise, you don't know the book. The same is true when you're reading Shakespeare. The same is true when you're reading Greek literature or any country's literature. You have to know the culture of that time to understand it. I mean, if you're going to sit and read Plautinus, who's a Roman playwright, a very bawdy Roman playwright, he was the Shakespeare of his day, you better know a lot about Roman culture or you're going to miss the jokes. Okay? Like with Shakespeare, a codpiece is talking about something, a protective, it's like a jockstrap. All right? A codpiece, cod to us means fish. And it was a joke about fish. Okay? Because of the same shape. That was a jockstrap in Shakespeare's day. Only it was worn outside and it was supposed to make you look bigger and more attractive to the ladies. Okay, you better know that. And other words that Shakespeare uses, or you're not going to get the jokes he makes. And the same thing is true of the Bible. If you don't know the culture behind it, you're not going to understand what it's saying and why it's saying what it's saying. Okay? So what's the Greek culture that produces this first chapter? Okay? Greek had rules of drama. All right? Matthew 1 is following the rules of Greek drama. And that's going to also set the tone for how the other writers map to Matthew. What is the rule of Greek drama? You have somebody come on stage as an announcer that sort of gives you the plot before the play opens. Okay? That blue text from Matthew 1 to Matthew 17 is the announcer function. Okay? The prologue. The whole story of Messiah is the story of history of the Jews. The story of history, period. And Luke in particular is going to pick up on that. Greek usage of the Hebrew story. When Luke does his genealogy, Luke is going to do the same thing Matthew's doing, but Matthew's only covering the Jews because Matthew's only addressing Isaiah 52:13 and 14. And Luke, in Luke 3, is going to do his genealogy from Adam to Adam, from last Adam, beginning with Christ, all the way back to first Adam, to encompass the Gentiles, and therefore he's using 77 sons, which is 77 syllables, which is Isaiah 52:13 through 15. And both of them are addressing the Greek drama principle of a prologue, except Luke is doing it in reverse for reasons that are going to become apparent. All right? Because sometimes you did your prologue in reverse. You had certain kinds of rules in Greek drama, and then because the rules existed, in order to make certain points or, make it more interesting at times, you reversed the rules. It's real important to know these things. So Matthew right now, because Matthew's doing legalistic, protocol, kingship, politics, that's his whole genre, his whole theme, okay? He's playing it traditional. He's doing traditional. Traditional Hebrew, traditional Greek. Okay? Traditional Greek says that you start, especially with the most ancient plays, you have one guy coming on stage at the beginning of the play that gives you the entree of the play, the backstory. Okay? It's called in Hollywood parlance today the backstory. What happened to bring you to the day of the play? All right? And is a prologue, it's usually an actor that sort of does this little recitation. And the recitation has a certain repetition, a certain cadence to it, to sort of, make it easier to remember. that's why he's doing it this way. And, like I said, each name has a special meaning, okay? This is, it's got double meaning here. God protects and God destroys, okay? And God rules. All those ideas are in there. This is sound play on 3 different Hebrew verbs. All right? This means wide and spacious. All right? This means peace. And it characterizes the time. So you're getting the history lesson. So the opening prologue is giving you the backstory. How did we get to here? Messiah. How did we get there? The narrator on stage at the beginning of the play is supposed to tell you what got us to the story that we're going to see played out more slowly now. Okay, so that's protocol. He's following Greek protocol and he's following Hebrew protocol. All right, and then he's citing, incorporating by reference Isaiah 53. Because, see, he says Messiah. Isaiah 53 is the quintessential chapter on Messiah. God-man, from first David to last David, is the meter of Isaiah in Hebrew. Okay? So that's why he ends it poetically like that. That's the prologue. That's the guy, the announcer. Matthew's playing announcer. All right? Now, the other thing you need to know about Greek drama is that in the very beginning of Greek drama, and you can look this up in Encyclopedia Britannica, in any book on the history of drama, the beginning of Greek drama was the same as the beginning of storytelling. All right? There used to be only one person talking, and that person would play all the roles. It's like sometimes when I do my little voices, okay? I could do all kinds of voices. If I ever practiced them, maybe I'd even make a living at it. But the point is that one actor would play all the roles. And in the beginning of Greek drama, you had one guy standing on stage that was set up with, a stadium with lots of acoustics so that everybody could hear in the back benches. And he would play all the roles. And then it got to a point where he'd wear different masks. And this is where we get hypocrites from, hypocrite. Because he's one person playing another person. All right? So there was one actor in the beginning. Classical Greek drama is classical storytelling, except that they morphed it to where you're standing on stage telling the story. And sometimes you had some props. And there's one guy playing all the roles. All right? So that's what Matthew's going to do. He's the narrator. He's taking the part of narrator, classical Greek drama, and then classical Greek drama, he's telling the rest of the story, quoting everybody else, playing their parts. But it's one actor playing the roles, quoting everybody else. Now, officially, this is the first scene in the story. So if it were a modern movie, you would have a voiceover that goes through here. Okay, kind of like John Huston's beginning, first part of the Bible, which is a very inaccurate movie about the Bible. But John Huston had a really great voiceover voice. And you could say, have some, dark screen and, all kinds of, flashes of different scenes while there's a voiceover reciting all this stuff. Then the first screen with actors on it, morphing this story now to our modern day movie, would be a depiction, which we usually even do in our Christian movies, showing it in tableau, or showing a silent acting of, Mary and Jesus and all that good stuff. This is their movie. This is their way of doing what we would call a movie or a play. So in later Greek drama, you actually had actors, they were usually men, even playing women's roles, and this would be silent while somebody's playing voiceover and announcing what they're doing. Okay, it's called mime. And that was very popular at the time that Matthew wrote this. Okay, so if he's playing narrator, you can view this two ways. If he's playing narrator, you could visualize it, and it was happening in Matthew's day, that there would be somebody reciting the story, and then there would be other actors on stage playing these roles. Okay, and then in even later Greek drama, which was also popular in Matthew's day, then one of the actors speaks. Okay, so the actor playing the angel would be interrupting the narrator when it's his time to talk. See, the narrator would say this part, and then the angel talks. He says, and when he said this, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream, saying, and that's where the narrator stops. And this is where the angel, the actor playing the angel, begins to talk. And then at times the narrator breaks in like this, and then maybe they have some other actor citing the verse. Okay? The people getting this text knew all that style. They knew all those stylistics. They lived with it. They used it every day. They made up their own plays. They even did graffiti about the plays. These people were very clever, and yes, they were literate. Okay? It's just a question of how well literate they were. Okay? So, Greek introduction, narrator talking, giving the backstory, that's this, which is already well known to the audience. Okay, this is already famous. Whether you believed it or agreed with it or not, it was famous. Okay? And then this is the summary saying fulfillment. And the reason why he's doing this is because he had introduced it by saying Messiah. This is the tie to Isaiah. And this is the first scene of our movie. The first scene of our movie, the first, not scene, but the first act even, first section, is the scandal of his birth. Scandal. So now, pretend you're Luke. You're just as familiar with Greek drama and Hebrew culture and Judaism as Matthew was, because Luke, was an associate of Paul. And who knows, how well he knew Judaism prior. So now Luke's job is to wrap around Matthew in order to prove Luke's own gospel, as he said, is from the Holy Spirit. That's his job. He's saying he's not the first, okay, but he's got to demonstrate. He's making a claim here that's either totally evil or really from the Holy Spirit. The official truth is how this should be translated. The official truth. Oh, he's claiming to speak the official truth. Well, then he's claiming to speak from the Holy Spirit. And this is a Gentile. The one Gentile writer in the entire Bible. Okay? He's the only Gentile. So maybe he converted to Judaism before, I don't know. Doesn't look like it. But he's claiming he's going to give you the official truth. Okay, well then he better wrap to Matthew, and he better do it perfectly, by the standards of the people who are listening to him, who are reading it. Because they got to test what he says for whether or not it's coming from God. Alright? So where does he start? Well, on the left, you got Matthew starting with a political scandal at Christ's birth. So where does Matthew pick up? Well, first of all, he's going to do the prequel, because he's going full circle to John the Baptist. He's going to do the prequel, starting with a different scandal, because this too is a scandal. The scandal of John the Baptist. The scandal of John the Baptist preceded the scandal of Christ's birth. And they unite at the point when, of course, Mary gets the announcement from Gabriel, as we're going to see, and goes to Elizabeth. So he starts in back of. His backstory doesn't have to be the genealogy. His backstory has to be because of why he's going to do it the way he does it, which you'll see. His backstory starts with the prior scandalous birth. The left-hand side, Matthew, scandalous birth. The right-hand side, scandalous birth. The left-hand side, scandalous birth of a king. The right-hand side, scandalous birth of somebody entitled to be high priest. See? Daughters of Aaron. The only people who could become high priests had to be sons of Aaron. The Aaronic line was the only line entitled to high priesthood. At the time that Christ was born, at the time that Zacharias was serving in temple, that biblical setup had been bypassed. At the time Zacharias was serving, it was about 140 years after the Maccabees had taken over and won independence away from the Greeks. And as a result of their winning independence in about 141 BC, they become quickly apostate. And they intermarry with the Arabs. That's how Herod came to be in power. And they also manipulated, because they really weren't entitled to be high priests. They were entitled to be priests, but not high priests. And they also weren't entitled to rule. But they manufactured for themselves a royal line. They manufactured for themselves a high priesthood. So by the time Zacharias, who is of the right line, his kid is, I'm not sure Zacharias as a son was a son of Aaron. All right, he says he's from AbiJah. All right. The daughters of Aaron, he was married to Elizabeth. She was a daughter of Aaron. Aaron had married the daughters of Judah, a daughter of Judah. You know, when I say daughter of Judah, I mean, from the line of Judah. Okay. So the whole line here is entitled to the highest positions. Whether Zacharias himself was the son of Aaron doesn't look like it, because the Bible would have distinguished him instead of distinguishing Elizabeth, which tells you a lot. But the actual high priest at the time Zacharias is serving is not appointed based on being a son of Aaron. He's appointed based on political reasons, and he's appointed by Herod. That's why Herod and Zacharias are mentioned in the same verse. Okay? So Herod was doing the appointing of the high priest. It wasn't following biblical principles. It was that apostate. Now you got to know that in order to understand why this prophecy is the way it's going to be. All right? So Zacharias is serving, and he's entitled to, under the Bible. He's from the division of AbiJah, which means he was legitimate. Okay? It's his wife who's a daughter of Aaron, but that makes the son, okay, because the genealogy goes through the mother, that makes the son entitled to serve as a high priest, as a priest in the temple and a high priest. Okay, but the political brouhaha is that's not, God isn't going to allow it. So on the left-hand side, you've got God creating a political brouhaha by making a virgin be with child. And again, it didn't have to occur that way. God could have changed the prophecy and made it happen differently, and it still would have been Messiah. God could have made any woman pregnant. The virgin pregnancy has to be there because of the old sin nature. But she can be a virgin just after she's married. She doesn't have to be unmarried. All right? And she doesn't really have to be a virgin so long as she's impregnated by the Holy Spirit, which means that he just orders it. It doesn't mean having sex, crying out loud. God could just order some woman to be pregnant, whether she's married or not, whether she's a virgin or not. He didn't have to create this problem. He does have to make a person pregnant outside of, it can't be the normal pregnancy. Because normal pregnancy transmits the old sin nature through the man. We see that in many places, but Romans 5:12 just came to mind. So this prophecy didn't have to be like this. But to make it like this gives Satan the advantage, taints the birth of Christ in the popular mind, makes his legitimacy suspect. All right? And how many virgins claim that they were filled with Messiah between the time Isaiah spoke? Who knows? Okay? But you can see the problem there. How do you validate that? Some woman says that, God made her pregnant. Oh, yeah. The first thing we'd all do is say no. Okay? And that's attacking the politics. That's attacking the kingship. It's politically incorrect, and it attacks the kingship. But this is also politically incorrect and attacks the temple. Now this in its own way is worse, because the rule is that somebody's got to serve at temple from the sons of Aaron. To not do so, to break that rule, means that Israel should have been killed, the whole nation. That was its job, was to become a priest nation, and the daughters of Aaron were supposed to head it up. I mean, sons of Aaron, really. But a daughter of Aaron bears a son of Aaron. I hope you get that. Okay? So what's this? Look at this. Remember, this is the parallel. This was the opening scene. Well, right here. This is the opening scene in Matthew. The parallel, and that's another criterion of Greek drama, is that you have to have parallel and balance. Aristotle's Poetics and certain other books by Aristotle set out the rules of what constitutes classical Greek drama, and Luke is obeying them, even as Matthew did, because that was the culture at the time. Everybody was multicultural in Israel. They were a trading nation. That's how they made their money. Okay, they were the Switzerland, of 3 continents in those days. Okay, well, doggone it. Have a look at that. This isn't while yet in his mother's womb. Okay, this is out from his mother's womb. Galatians, Paul will talk to this, but the actual Greek says out from his mother's womb, not while yet in. This is a deliberate mistranslation by people who want you to think that there's life in the womb. Okay, I'll cover that in future videos in my pro-life blasphemy series. I don't have time to cover it now. The point is that, look at this. He will be great in the sight of the Lord. He will drink no wine or liquor, okay, and he will be filled with the Holy Spirit. And technical translation is outside, from the minute he's born. He will be filled with the Holy Spirit. Okay? Let's tie that to Matthew 3 for a minute. Okay? See this? Both of those are tying to each other. Luke is tying to Matthew 3, but he's doing it, like I said, in reverse order for reasons that will become apparent as we go along. Now, when you look on the left-hand side, Matthew 3:4, camel, garment of camel's hair, a leather belt around his waist. That is evocative of Elijah. Elijah was considered to be unkempt. He was a wild man. He lived out in the boonies. He was always taunting religious crowd. Everybody hated him. Okay, and the kings of Israel tried to kill him, especially what's her face, I forget her name. Jezebel. Okay, I think it was Jezebel. All right. Camels were unclean animals. They were not kosher. All right. Garment of camel's hair. Okay, that means that it was rough, it was ugly, stinky. Leather belt around his waist means he was wandering around. And his food is locusts and wild honey. Again, unclean. You notice he's not eating kosher. Okay? This is the guy who is from what? a daughter of Aaron, who is going to be what? Out in the wilderness, not in the temple. He's not in the temple. That means he's rejecting the temple. But it was a sin for a son of Aaron to reject serving in the temple. That was his job. From age 20, or age 30 rather, to age 50. Well, he's rejecting it. This prophecy is about somebody who is, explaining to Israel as a herald of the Lord, you're crooked, okay? When it says make his path straight, that's an idiom. This, technically what would happen is the herald would run well in advance of the king. And everybody would build a road, really well in advance of the king. Make his path straight means build a road that leads straight into town to honor the king. So if it was a dirt path or blah, 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 they would start getting stones. They would try to do some kind of paving, depending on how much time they had, in order to make the path comfortable for the king to arrive. All right? He's in the wilderness, see? There are no roads. Make ready the way. This word way is translated in Hebrew in the Isaiah passage as derek. It means road. Okay? We just gloss over these words. We're so familiar with them, we don't think about it. But this means to get the road ready. The road to your town. So you can receive him with honor. Make his path straight. Well, you don't want a crooked road. You don't want a road filled with loose stones. You don't want a road that's going to trip the horses. You don't want a road that's going to injure anybody. So this is like, get the Olympics. So the Olympics have been announced for our town. Let's clean up. And he's in the wilderness when he says it. And this isn't just wilderness. This is evocative of tohu wabohu. When the earth was all messed up by Satan and company, Genesis 1-2. That is not the initial creation of the world. I cover that in my Genesis videos from the Hebrew. I show it. Okay? Wilderness. Tohu wabohu. You're all messed up, just like the earth was all messed up. Get straight. This word straight is going to be a key word in Mark. So, this guy is eating camel's hair, eating locusts and wild honey. The Jews aren't supposed to do that. And he's wearing an unclean animal's hair when he's supposed to instead be wearing garments made of particular kinds. The priestly clothing was regulated. He's not wearing it. He's dressing like Elijah. Elijah was not welcome in the priestly caste. But he was appointed by God because the priests weren't doing their job. That's the same message being told here. And of course this plays back to Malachi 4, verses 5 and 6. Alright? Which is quoted here. Alright? Now, this part here is also politically incorrect. Because what was one of the things that the Hebrews had to do? The Jewish priests had to make wine. The only time of year that the wine was not fermented and therefore non-alcoholic was Passover. The rest of the time, it had to be alcoholic. It had to be fermented. You poured out drink offerings to the Lord. So they were the priests were winemakers. They were butchers. They were adept at construction. And all of these things, this son of Aaron is supposed to reject and instead go out to the wilderness. He's not allowed to eat beef. He's not allowed to wear beef. He's not allowed to wear priest's clothes. He's supposed to act like scruffy, unkempt, smelly Elijah. You can just imagine how well that went down with the people who've been brought up to obey the law. It's not that they didn't know what this meant, But they're not going to jump on, they're not going to be pleased with this guy. Because, you know, I mean, a lot of weirdos. I mean, if somebody came to your house smelling of camel's hair with an old scruffy leather belt that isn't just around his waist, it's like a baldric, okay? Smelling, you know, eating locusts and honey, and you realize that they're alive. You can't let something be dead in that part of the world very long. So you keep them alive and you basically eat them alive, or just freshly killed, or you kill them while you're eating them by eating the head. This is not somebody that's going to be aesthetically pleasing to an audience, especially since he's supposed to be a priest. And oh, by the way, he doesn't drink any wine or liquor. That's evocative of the Nazirite vow and Samson, judge of Israel. Okay? Not drinking wine when wine was basically ordered under the Mosaic law for proper service to God. Okay? It does mean, you know, he's not drunk either. But the point is that he's apart from society. So this is an announcement by an angel, and you can just imagine what would have happened. This is why Zacharias bucks it. Oh, don't be afraid, Zacharias. Your petition is heard. You're going to have a son. Oh, great. You know, because it was a real problem that she was barren, because she is a daughter of Aaron. That was a political problem. And so he's saying, okay, you're going to have a son, and this is the name you're going to give him, which isn't in the family. You will be joyful at his birth. Okay, but the rest of the story isn't so joyful. I mean, it's joyful that it's going to turn out this way. All right? But this is the bad news right here. Okay? And since he's evocative, since he's already introduced this, Elijah to come, this business about camel's hair and leather belt was already known. And Elijah didn't conform to kosher food either. So, you know, this is just one version of that. I don't recall a verse saying Elijah ate locusts and honey. But he didn't conform to protocol on kosher food. So, all that's kind of implied in this quote. All right, to Zacharias. So Zacharias is realizing that his son is going to basically make his whole family be persona non grata in the community. It's got a great ending after he's dead. But he's being told, hi, I'm going to just put you in political doo-doo. And your kid, who's supposed to serve in the temple, isn't. So you see the parallel? Back in Matthew 1, we end with persecuted people, persecuted by everybody on the planet who knows about their story, okay, which is a lot of people because Israel's placed where she is, okay. Instead of being helped by God, God's helping the opposition by making the people have to doubt their own king. Hi, I'm Messiah, but by the way, you don't even know if I'm legitimately a son of David. You see that? Okay, well, hi. Elijah to come. Yeah, that all sounds real good on text. But, he's not going to drink wine or liquor. Okay, well then how can he be a priest? See, the priests were supposed to offer it in temple, and then they lived on the residue. You basically offered, the priest would get the offerings, which was 10% of people's income or whatever they freely brought, and then the priests used some of it, and they ate the rest. So to refuse to eat what's offered to God was sacrilegious. Oh, okay, Elijah, well, you know, happy Elijah, 3 wise men, blah, blah, blah. There's all this fake stuff said about Elijah, too, just like there's all that fake stuff said about the Magi. But the real Elijah was persona non grata to Israel. And oh, hi, Zacharias, your kid that you've waited forever to have and haven't had is going to be persona non grata, and that means your whole family is going to be ostracized. And he's not going to be obeying the Mosaic law. Not. By God's own order, not. Okay? By God's own order, this guy is wearing camel's hair instead of the uniform of a priest that by the Mosaic law he's supposed to wear. He's got a baldric of leather around him instead of an ephod, which he's supposed to wear. I mean, potentially he's entitled to be high priest. And he's eating unkosher food by rule. And where is he? He's in the wilderness. He's not a temple. See how these things are violating the Mosaic law by God's own order. Just like God ordered abortion in Numbers 5:27. That's episode 9 of my pro-life blasphemy videos. I show it in the Hebrew, even how the Hebrew scholars were shocked by it. One of them speculating that the woman was pregnant by another man, and that's why God ordered the abortion. I show it to you from the text in BibleWorks in Thayer. Not Thayer, but Twot, Theological Workbook of the Old Testament. Political incorrectness is a style of God's. We got to get used to it. And here's a guy whose own son is going to make him a pariah by prophecy. So on the left-hand side of the equation, we got a king that's been promised for centuries, coming exactly on time, whose own birth is going to give rise to a question of legitimacy. And here's, on the opposite side, we got his Jewish herald, who is evocative of Elijah, telling the people that they're so apostate that Elijah comes back, who is demonstrably not obeying the Mosaic law for the high priesthood to which he belongs by birth. And his whole family is going to be persona non grata with him. Now, Zacharias, which you have to know, one more thing. This was the highest honor that a priest could get. Okay? Sort of being the actual high priest that year. Okay? This was the highest honor you could get, and you usually got it just before you were retiring. Okay? And again, that's, see, they were both advanced in years. This guy is ready to retire. This means that he is near 50. Okay, if they were following the Mosaic law and retiring people at 50, or he was much older. Okay, because, they weren't following the Mosaic law, so maybe they kept their people to serve later. But he was of the right tribe, he was of the right division. Luke is taking particular pains to let you know that he's following the proper order. But this was an honor that you got. Okay, it's the equivalent of getting an Academy Award. A lot of Academy Awards are given to older people, not so much because of the picture that they made, but because they should have gotten the Academy Award in other pictures, and before they retire, the Academy wants to honor them. That's a very frequent thing that's done. Okay, it's the same kind of thing. This is the highest honor of your career. He is just outside the Holy of Holies, burning incense just at the veil. Okay? And that's why this is so important. The people are outside. See, he's standing, you have to get this as a scene now. He's just outside the veil. But there's another entrance, and the people are outside. And what they usually did, is they were waiting to see if he'd get some kind of word from God or something. This was a special occasion, all right, for him to go in there. And I'm not sure, it's not named what occasion. Maybe I could find out if I look more at the text. But it could have been temple dedication as the occasion, because this works out to be Ziv, the course of AbiJah that he's in. operated in Ziv and Bull. And either one of those two, of course, we know from later text in Luke that it's Ziv. The temple was founded in Ziv. The first temple was built in Ziv. That's 1 Kings 6:1. Okay, so there might have been some kind of custom of the people to wait to see some kind of blessing that the Lord might pronounce to the priest who was in there to burn the incense. Okay, there was this story, and I can't find it now, how they had tassels and bells on the robe of the priest in case he got struck dead, so the people would know. But that was usually reserved for going in on Yom Kippur, okay, to see if God would accept the nation for one more year. That was the only time you could go in as a high priest. But he's not a high priest. He's not going into the Holy of Holies. He's just going into the inner part of the temple just before it. All right, and they're waiting to see what's going to happen when he comes out, if there's going to be some prophetic word. All right? Now see, here's the angel standing to the right of the altar of incense. That was right in front of the Holy of Holies. And that's when he gets the vision. Okay? And the vision is, hi, your kid's going to be a pariah, and you're going to be hated by your own, your own family. You're all going to be in deep doo-doo. But by the way, that's going to save Israel, because it's going to give birth to a herald who's going to point the way for the guy on the left-hand side of the screen, whose own legitimacy is going to be in doubt for his entire lifetime. And you're not even going to function as your son's not even going to function as a legitimate priest. He's going to be crying out in the wilderness. You see this? You see the political parallel? You got on the left-hand side a political brouhaha starting at birth of a people who's more persecuted than any people on the planet in world history, the Jews, for no reason. And when God gives his promises, he always gives them to you with this burden. Hi, I'm gonna cause you to have a lifetime of shit. Sorry for the French, but you know what? That's the promise. It was promised to the Jews, Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28. It's gorgeous weather, or it's raining all the time for them. If they follow the Lord, nobody can come after them. If they don't follow the Lord, anybody can come after them, and everything they do is going to turn to muck. And by the way, if you're faithful to me, it's also still going to turn to muck. Left-hand side, right-hand side. I mean, you have to argue that Mary and Joseph were enough faithful to want this to happen. And so too Zacharias and Elizabeth. But the promise is not a nice one. You get that? The promise is politically incorrect. And you get this great benefit after you die. But meanwhile, while you're here, it's a cross. Ding, 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 ding. So Zacharias is positive, but at the same time, negative. How do I know that, this is going to happen? All right? And it's good news long term. Good news. Remember, good news is euangelion, and it means official news from the sovereign. The idea of the king giving the message is never outside the meaning of good. It's the king's good news, if we want to translate in idiomatic English. But they always, cut out God, so they don't say kings. They just say good news. And we chirp good news. Oh, this is good news. It's not good news. It's news that this guy is going to be persecuted for the rest of his days. At the time he's retiring, he's going to be persecuted, because his son is going to be a pariah. Okay, well, but it's good news long term. And by the way, because you rejected the fact that I'm going to make you a pariah for the rest of your life, but you're going to be happy about it after you're dead, because you rejected it, I'm going to make you dumb. You won't be able to talk. Now, see, look. You got a prophecy here. This is Luke tracking to Matthew again. You got a prophecy here that's going to be unpleasant to the person who gets it. Because who's going to believe her? All right? You got another prophecy here that's going to be unpleasant to the person who gets it, namely Zacharias in this case. See, on this side it's a woman, and, by application Joseph. This time it's a man, and by application his wife. You won't be able to talk. For 9 months, the thing you waited all your life for, which, by the way, is going to make you a pariah. Remember, that's the meaning of the word Zacharias. It comes from Zachar, meaning to remember. You're going to be a pariah, and that's good news, baby. Long term, but not in the interim. And by the way, let's give you some more bad news. You aren't going to be able to talk about the one thing you want to talk the most about, because you made this little objection. Well, but how am I going to know? I'm old. I can't have sex, in other words. Same argument that Abraham made, remember? I'm old. But Abraham believed in the Lord and credited to his account as righteousness. Genesis 50. Now Zacharias believes, but, he's talking the way Abraham did in Genesis 12. Oh, really? I'm going to have a son. Gee, you gave me so-and-so of Damascus. He's going to inherit. Where's the son from Sarah that you promised me? I mean, Abraham was really snotty to God in Genesis 12. Well, the snottiness got penalized by Abraham having to wait even longer. And Zacharias gets penalized by being made dumb. You see? So, what is that going to do? Oh, well, hello. This woman, Elizabeth, gets pregnant supposedly by her husband. Okay? But if he's objecting because he can't have sex, then, and he can't talk about what happened to him, you can just imagine the speculation against Elizabeth was the same as the speculation against her cousin Mary 6 months later. You get that? See that parallel? You notice how Luke is very carefully looking at the Matthew text to craft his own text. He's making parallels in the storyline, parallels in the plot line, parallels in the character, parallels in the genre. And nobody who knew the story would miss that. And nobody who's reading Bible carefully misses it. But you know what? We're not reading Bible carefully. So they waited for Zacharias. He came out. He was unable to talk. He made signs and remained mute. They figured he had seen a vision. When his days of priestly service, he entered back home. Okay, she became pregnant, and she goes into seclusion. Yeah, she better go into seclusion. Who really made her pregnant? Opposite side. See, the left-hand side is opposite in content and concept. A virgin, never married, having a kid too early. Here's a woman that shouldn't be playing around on her husband after 30 years of marriage, and she has to be in seclusion for 5 months. Yeah, because nobody's going to believe, since she was barren all that time. I mean, you have to think about that. She's been barren all this time, and now she's pregnant. Okay, so then the implication is that her husband is not the father. You got that? Here, it's that this woman, who's a virgin, allegedly, meaning she's unmarried, she's pregnant? Okay, well, Joseph was betrothed to her, so the natural thought would be it was Joseph in a moment of weakness, or she's an adulteress, because she got it too early. Here we got Elizabeth, his wife, is pregnant by who? Because she was married to Zacharias all that time and never got pregnant, and now is suddenly pregnant, yeah, you'd be in seclusion for 5 months too. Hiding, lest the tongues wag and say, did you maybe have a young man as your lover for a night? See, legitimacy at birth, and even if it's accepted, remember, same story as Matthew 2 now. See, Luke is concatenating it. If the legitimacy is accepted in Matthew 2 of Christ being the king, that's World War III. Covered that in the last, in Synoptics 4 and in Synoptics 1. Okay, but it's the same story here. Look. This is the guy. Now I have to switch over to Matthew 3. Okay? This guy is not going to be kosher. He's not going to be serving in the temple, even though... Oh, crud. Even though, hello, he's a son of a daughter of Aaron. Okay, but he's going to be refusing the priestly offices. He's going to be what? Starting a different kind of World War III. You have to understand, at the time this was written, the Sanhedrin was controlling. It was politically under the thumb of Herod, even though it hated Herod, because Herod was, the puppet for Rome. And the Sanhedrin, the high priest each year was appointed by the Sanhedrin ostensibly, but Herod was, running the show, not always successfully, in getting the appointment, and it wasn't operating according to the Bible. And so all of the people were oppressed. This whole business that the Jews talk about with their 613 commandments, all right, they invented. If you read the Talmud, and especially if you read the Mishnah, you see how they created all these laws, these really silly, stupid, petty laws, out of the core of the Mosaic law, which was not stupid and petty. It was designed to teach. It wasn't designed to run your life. It was designed to keep on reminding you of the promise of Messiah. And that's why you went in for the rituals and stuff. They were mnemonics, okay, to remind you, to reassure you. Okay? But the Jews turned that into a set of petty, stupid, religious laws, just like Catholicism did. Catholicism and Judaism were twins. Okay, so the same human nature that decided to make all the rituals and the movements into things that made you a good person if you did them. Therefore, you missed the training and the happiness purpose. Okay, and you gotta say that the people who, are in charge of observing the rules and everything, that they taught the people, hi, this is supposed to reassure you. It's not supposed to be used to make you feel good about yourself and to pride yourself versus someone else. There were a lot of good priests, okay, in Catholicism, and a lot of good priests in Judaism. But the bulk, the people, especially the people in charge, used it to gain power, political power. And this, therefore, gives World War III inside the priesthood. It splits the priesthood. This, on the left-hand side, is saying, hi, the priesthood is corrupt. This is what the theme of Malachi was about. That's the whole meaning of the book, is the corruption of the priesthood. And therefore, I'm going to do this. I'm going to send you somebody just before the day of the Lord, and this is how you're going to recognize him. He's going to look like Elijah and smell like Elijah. Not be priestly, not conform to the Mosaic law for priests. And he's going to be somewhat like the number 6 Nazirite vow person. But drinking no wine means that he's not going to be making offerings in the temple. And he's going to disdain it, which you're not supposed to do as a priest. So this is going to split the priesthood up. This is asserting that the priesthood is illegitimate. This is God declaring war on the priesthood. That is another kind of civil war. That's why what Luke is saying in Luke 1 ties to the message in Matthew 2. You got political war, kingship legitimacy question. Here you got religious war. And it's all civil war with obviously international implications. This is saying the priesthood is no good. See, the people were against the priesthood by this point, but they couldn't do anything about it. This would justify revolution. That's why you had so many different movements. The Zacharias, for example, which is a fancy name for assassins. They were out to get rid of, they were part of the factions that would have, aligned with Persia, if they could have, against the Romans. That's the left-hand side. But you had the factions inside the priesthood. You had the faction of the Sadducees, you had the Pharisees, you had other versions. They were always fighting with each other. They was always playing games behind the scenes for political power. And then you had Herod playing the factions against each other in order to keep control of them all. And here comes this guy, John, who's going to be against Herod, which fractures his own power base, saying that they're all wrong. So it doesn't look like God is saving Israel, does it? It doesn't look like God is honoring the people who want Him either, does it? You want God? Well, see, if you want God, you're going to be persecuted. If you're holy to God, you have to turn against the establishment. Turn against it here. Turn against it here. And by the way, what reward are you going to get for God if you turn against the establishment in order to obey the prophecy to Him? You're going to be persecuted by the very people who God is allegedly saving, including you. You better know who Christ is. You better know your Bible. You better know that this word is true, or you ain't going to make it. It's the Job story. It's the cross. We all have the same story in our lives, every single one of us. Nobody is different from another. We just take a different amount of time to get to the destination, and the destination for some of us is shorter or longer. This is our story. This is the story of the Jews. That's why the Jews are persecuted. You're persecuted if you believe, and you're persecuted if you don't. It's just a question of what's the reason. If you are persecuted because you believe, it's in order to make you stronger. If you're persecuted because you don't believe, God is punishing you to make you turn around. See? Turn the hearts back, and that's Leviticus 26. You can read it. So, see, look. This is the guy who's going to turn the whole world upside down, reverse the priesthood, create World War III, because that's what would happen. Create total political instability inside Israel by striking at the core of the Sanhedrin. And by the way, because you're going to object to me the way Abraham did in Genesis 12, I'm going to make you mute. Okay? And then, to add to the story, okay, we're going to skip the Mary part. We'll cover that in the next episode. What we want to do is come back here about, I'm going to skip the Magnificat too. Alright? I'm going to skip down here to this. The time for Elizabeth came. Alright? Zacharias is going to pronounce a blessing. He is addressing the left-hand side of the screen when he does. But first take a look at the right-hand side in its blue text. When Elizabeth is coming to give birth, her neighbors and her relatives, okay, well, I think I'll cover that in the next increment.